Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibuyers, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Monday, January 5th. Had to pivot a bit today because the Sarah Grace Patrick trial that was supposed to start today has now been continued until August. The state was the one that filed the motion for a continuance because they are waiting on an expert report. So, thankfully, one of my listeners and mods let me know about this case that's going to trial next week. It's the Brendan Banfield trial. That starts on January 12th, and I'll be live streaming and recapping that daily. And we're going to get into the backstory in just a second. One thing I want to let you guys know about is during the day for about 12 hours, I'm going to do a live stream where people can just pop in and chat with each other about whatever, as long as it's respectful. It doesn't have to be about crime. It can be about your dog, your kids, whatever. Just a little place for everybody to come pop in if you're bored and just chew the fat with the rest of the Alibuyers. So look for that. If you're subscribed, hit that little bell notification and it'll let you know every time I go live or post any new content, which is really important with YouTube Shorts when I have a little piece of information to share, but not enough for a full episode. So make sure you're subscribed. So let's get into this backstory. This involves a live-in nanny who Brendan was having an affair with. She was 23 years old, Juliana Perez Magalhães. She was charged with second-degree murder in the deaths of Joseph Ryan, who was 38. He was shot to death. And then Brendan's wife, 37-year-old Christine Banfield, who was stabbed to death. The murders happened on February 24th, 2023. Now, Juliana and Brendan were involved in an affair before and after the murders. That affair started in August of 2022, about a year after she started working for the couple. During the investigation, investigators found photos of Brendan and Juliana on a trip to New York at a concert, as well as other photos from the trip where they looked to be very much a couple. They also found photos of Juliana at a gun range practicing her target shooting. Juliana was arrested months later after the murders on October 19th, 2023. And then almost a year later, Brendan was arrested on September 16th, 2024. He was indicted and charged on 4 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, as well as child abuse due to the fact that his 4-year-old daughter was inside the house at the time of the murders. At Brendan's bond hearing, the state said Brendan's mother was paying for Juliana's attorney and also controlling her ability to cooperate with authorities. Not long after Brendan was arrested, on October 29th, 2024, Juliana pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Brendan for the prosecution. In exchange, her charges were reduced to manslaughter with a penalty of up to 10 years in prison. However, the prosecution is recommending after Brendan's trial, she be released with time served and then be deported back to Brazil. Now, Juliana was a live-in caregiver at the $1 million home that Brendan and Christine lived in Hattontown, Virginia, which is in Fairfax County. Juliana came to the United States in October of 2021 from Brazil on a work visa to be a live-in nanny. Officers who arrived on the crime scene called it appalling. Christine was found in an upstairs bedroom with stab wounds on her upper body. She was taken to a hospital where she later died. Joseph was shot multiple times in the upper body, and he was pronounced dead on scene. It all started when Brendan allegedly told Juliana his desire to be rid of his wife, and it wasn't long after that the planning began. Juliana told investigators that before the murders, Brendan replaced their windows with really expensive, more soundproof windows, and he asked Juliana to help test those out. She said she went outside in the driveway, and Brendan went up to the bedroom and started screaming and yelling to see if she could hear. She said she couldn't hear much. In the fall and winter of 2022, Brendan took Juliana to firing ranges at least twice to teach her how to shoot. The logs at the business confirmed they were there, as well as photos investigators found. Their plan was this was going to be a BDSM situation that just went wrong. And to accomplish this, Brendan allegedly created an account on FetLife.com and started talking to the members, including Joseph Ryan. FetLife is a website for users who engage in these kind of fantasies and role-playing. Brendan wanted a specific type of person, someone who would sound violent and play the role the way Brendan wanted him to. So Brendan started interacting with Joseph's profile. His attorneys are arguing he did not create that account. They say Christine did. His attorneys also suggest somebody in the police department made up the whole catfish theory. Brendan had Juliana start to talk to Joseph using the app Telegram. That's an app where users can exchange messages, share media files, they can hold private or group voice or video calls, as well as have public live streams. And in a call just days before the murders, Brendan had Juliana call Joseph, pretending to be Christine to confirm details and also to verify that both parties were willing participants. After that, Brendan set his sights on Joseph and lured him to the home on the morning of February 24th, 2024. Investigators believe Joseph was under the impression he was meeting Christine for a consensual encounter involving restraints, her clothing being cut off with a knife, and other violent acts. A search of the Banfield's computer showed they had been on that website, and they found a profile for Christine that showed communications between that profile and Joseph Ryan. However, the way the person pretending to be Christine talked to Joseph wasn't how family and friends described her, and so investigators believe someone was pretending to be Christine. That was later verified by Juliana in her confession. Juliana said she told Brendan several times before the day of the murder she didn't think he would go through with it, or she would tell him she didn't want to go through with it. According to her, Brendan said it was too late for her to back out. So on the morning of February 24th, Brendan gave Juliana a firearm that he bought on January 28th, 2023. Juliana said she told Christine some other nannies were taking all their kids to the zoo, so Christine bought them tickets. As Juliana took the child to the car, that's when Joseph pulled in. Christine was asleep. One thing that was said during the conversation with Juliana and Joseph is it was part of the game where the person gets into the bedroom and the other person may act scared or try to run or scream, but it was part of the act. That morning, Brendan pretended to leave for work, but he was actually positioned at a McDonald's, just about 6 minutes away from the family home. Juliana told investigators initially she left home to take the daughter to the zoo, but she said she forgot to grab the packed lunches and went back to the house. The plan was for Juliana to call Christine when she saw Joseph come inside the house, and then to call Brendan, saying there was a strange man in the house and she was scared. She did call Christine, but it went to voicemail because Brendan turned her phone off and put it in a kitchen drawer before he left the house that morning. When Juliana called Brendan, he called Christine's phone, but obviously it went to voicemail. He quickly came back home, and he and Juliana and his daughter entered the home through the basement. Brendan had his service weapon, and Juliana had the one given to her by Brendan. They went into the bedroom, and Joseph was holding Christine down. Brendan called out police officer and then shot Joseph in the head. Juliana's attorney said she heard the phrase, "drop the knife," and eventually she heard the sound of flesh being struck. Juliana called 911, and while that call was short, Joseph could be heard moaning in the background, so Brendan told her to hang up, and so she did. Brendan then stabbed Christine more, and Juliana, at Brendan's direction, opened a safe to get the gun that she already had in her possession, is how it was put out there, maybe for an alibi or to have her fingerprints on that safe. So Juliana went back into the bedroom and saw Joseph was still moving, so she shot him. Investigators believe the bodies were staged after their deaths, and one way they say they were able to connect Brendan to the murders is that evidence allegedly indicates Brendan smeared blood from Christine onto the body of Joseph. A little later, Brendan said he was ready, so Juliana called 911 again and reported that Joseph was an intruder who stabbed Christine. After first responders arrived, Brendan went to the hospital with Christine, and Juliana went to the police station along with the 4-year-old. During that interview, Juliana admitted to shooting Joseph once after Brendan had already shot him and presented that as self-defense. In another interview on October 25th, 2024, Juliana came clean with investigators, and her story matched the evidence the Fairfax investigators found during the course of their investigation. When they were serving another search warrant on the home in October of 2023, investigators found framed photos of Brendan and Juliana in what they call loving poses in the bedroom, which, by the way, is where the murders happened, and they also found lingerie. In a search warrant that News 4 obtained, it showed that there were conversations between Juliana, Brendan before his arrest, as well as his mother, Teresa, and that Juliana communicated with Brendan and Teresa almost daily after her arrest, either by phone, text, or email using a jail tablet, and as we know, those are constantly monitored. In those conversations, both Brendan and his mom told Juliana not to talk about the crimes since the calls were being recorded. In one call, Teresa told Juliana she had been texting with one of her defense attorneys who allegedly offered to bring Juliana something during an attorney-client jail visit. Teresa read out a response from one of Juliana's attorneys while they were on this call, which said, "Hi, Tess. I'll be going to visit Juliana this morning. Expected to be there around 9. If I have anything, I give it to her." Teresa complained to the defense attorney that some things were not getting to Juliana, and it was the only way they could communicate with her about what was happening. The attorney did deny helping to get any correspondence from Brendan or Teresa to Juliana. The state also says they think there were plans that Brendan and Juliana had to flee the country. At one of the hearings, they showed photos of a new Brazilian passport for Juliana and said that Brendan was the one who drove her to the Brazilian consulate to apply for a new passport. After Juliana's arrest, Brendan was called as a witness at a pretrial hearing, but he would plead the fifth with every single question he was asked. Other phone calls that were monitored had Juliana telling Brendan, "I hope you're not just staying with me because you're afraid I'm going to turn against you." Now, there was some disagreement among detectives about whether or not it was Christine communicating with Joseph. This is a theory the defense is going to use at this trial. A summary of the case was prepared by a detective, Brendan Miller, that describes the online conversations between Joseph and who was presented as Christine, but we know was Juliana and Brendan. And the report says there is no indication that Christine lost control of her devices during the 6 weeks before the murders. The records show that her laptop and phone were used to contact Joseph, and that one of Brendan's phones had no such contact, but his phone for work could not be opened. These detectives testified at a hearing that they felt pressured by their superiors during the investigation. The prosecutors say the investigator who questioned it were transferred out for performance management reasons, and one deputy chief with the Fairfax Sheriff's Office admitted he had said Detective Miller would never work a case in major crimes again. At another hearing, the defense attorneys said that prosecutors were not giving them all the discovery, including the personnel records of the lead homicide detective, Kyle Bryant, and Detective Miller. The defense attorney also said that they suspect Kyle Bryant and Detective Miller were forced out of their units due to them disagreeing with the command staff's opinions about the case. He also mentioned an internal affairs complaint filed by 9 different homicide detectives, including investigator Bryant and Miller, where they said the work environment was hostile, caused by the commanders, and offensive, and it lasted over an extended amount of time. A police union has asked the Fairfax County Office of Human Rights and Equality to investigate this. That is one thing I'm going to look into and see if there was ever any decisions made about that. A digital summary of the forensic work done on Christine's electronics by investigator Miller showed Christine's phone was used to make a new Gmail account at the beginning of January 2023. The photo that was used to make that account on the fetish website was one she had emailed to Brendan. The summary says approximately 114 messages were exchanged between Christine and Joseph starting in late January to mid-February 2023, and that Christine was the one who wanted to start using the Telegram app on February 19th, 2023. After investigator Miller's analysis, the report was sent to the University of Alabama's evidence analysis team for a peer review, and their report echoed investigator Miller's analysis. Allegations from investigator Bryant include he was pressured to adopt a theory he did not agree was supported by the investigation. The judge did ask police and prosecutors to explore those concerns that a number of detectives and investigators have been transferred to other jobs in the department as this case moved forward. Now, the prosecution has had their own drama with an incident involving a senior prosecutor. Prosecutor Klingen, who had been assigned to the case, was placed on leave after police issued him a court summons for drinking alcohol in public. In body camera footage, the prosecutor is seen with an alcoholic beverage and a lit cigarette standing outside of his car in a Goodwill parking lot in Chantilly. The caller who reported the incident to 911 dispatch worked at an animal hospital that was nearby. The person told dispatch that the prosecutor had 2 beers and was seen there a lot. In the body cam, an officer can be heard saying, "This is a Commonwealth's attorney that's drunk. You can definitely smell alcohol coming off of his breath." The prosecutor was taken home and issued a court summons. He was also placed on leave, but later on, those charges were dropped after he completed the requirements set forth by the court to have that case dismissed. But he was replaced in this case. Brendan and Christine's daughter was interviewed, but the judge ruled that interview could not come into Brendan's trial. His attorneys say Brendan did not agree for his daughter to be interviewed. Juliana's confession was recorded, and she said Brendan was the mastermind behind the murders. After they began their affair, Brendan said he wanted to get rid of Christine. Juliana says she told him to get a divorce. He allegedly said, "That's not what I'm thinking about." After Brendan created the profile on the fetish site, she said her and Brendan would log on and try to solicit somebody to come to the house. After the indictment of Brendan, Joseph Ryan's mother, Deidre, told WUSA 9, "I want people to remember Joe for the good-natured, loving man that he was, for the man who loved his family, and he loved other people. He was socially aware. He was a kind person." Now, if Brendan is convicted, he faces life in prison without parole. So this is kind of just a short backstory. I still have a lot of digging to do. It's an older case. A lot's happened. So we'll likely have another episode at some point this week about this. But that is it for now. I hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.